1883 told the tale of a lone woodcarver who had dreamt of a friend, and in turn created a little wooden puppet who we know as Pinocchio. All was well until Pinocchio became real and started to become something too large for the woodcarver to handle. It spiraled into what could only be described as madness, and now the woodcarver has to bear with the responsibility of his creation, not knowing the mental burden that it would bring. Now, what if Pinocchio was a TCG? And chemistry at that? Salutation, neighbors! You might have come across this video and thought to click it. If so, welcome! I don't really know how to start these intros, so that's pretty much the best you'll get from me. My name's Adam, and I come from Malaysia. You know, the one and only land of forests. And between traversing through trees, leaves, and pretty much everything in between,
This is your last warning.
I also like to do game dev in my spare time. Specifically about the one that I'm going to talk about in this video, which I call Electro. Like that? Like that? I'm just saying it again. Okay, so what is it really? Well, before that, I'd have to answer the most elephant-shaped question in the room. So a while back, my school held a competition, basically telling us that we had to form teams and create a STEM-based project. And for those who don't know, STEM is basically an abbreviation of science, technology, engineering, and maths. Sometimes there's also an A in there, which stands for like arts and architecture, but it really depends on which country you live in. And the catch was that it had to have augmented reality integrated with it as well. So me, being the absolute donker that I am, took the subject that I had the most interest in, which was chemistry, and decided to make it into a card game. Mind you, the only reason why I thought of doing this was because I saw Inscription being played back then, which I thought was a pretty cool game. Prior to that, the only card games that I had any semblance of playing was Bakugan and Buddy Fight. To those who know. I was essentially a noob at the time, only knowing the cores of TCG like energy systems and card stats, but the idea of creating something that, for all we know, has never been done before motivated me enough to actually go through and create prototype cards for the presentation day, which I think was maybe 4 cards at the time. Fast forward to 2 years later, plus procrastination, and I now have well over 50 unique cards, all of them being based around the basic building blocks in chemistry. What does that mean? I'm glad you I actually made a brochure a while back, which basically summarizes what Electrobond is, so I'm just gonna read that instead. Electrobond is an AR-oriented card game based around chemistry and alchemy. It takes chemical concepts and adds creative twists to it by basing characters off of molecules or implementing chemical reactions as a core gameplay mechanism. So yeah, it's a card game. I mean, that's pretty much it. I think for better visualization, I'm just gonna show you the cards that I've got IRL. Yeah, hello. I'm a human now. Go figure. Anywho, I'm gonna show you guys the cards that I've got right now. So, as you can see right here, this is the box that basically contains all the cards. Well, most of the cards that I have in my game. So, you can see right here the designs that I have for now. And maybe I'll give it a bit up close here. So there's a lot, really, and all these are different, they're unique. I won't be showing all of them, but I will be showing the types of cards that I have for my game. So, without further ado, we just get started, right? So, first things first, I gotta tell you guys about the basic cards. Now, basic cards, these are basically the gray cards, right? So, they basically comprise of all elements in the periodic table. which is essentially saying that in the completed version of my game, there should be about 117 basic cards in total. And these basic cards, they're basically the lowest unit, right? It's basically the same concept as Pokemon cards. So in the start of the game, you're always going to play these cards first. And I've got some of these cards here. The basic design philosophy is that they're mostly round, just kind of imitating those like generic representation of atoms sort of thing. So that's this thing that you'll see with most basic cards. Alright, so I'm just gonna put that there. Next up, we have the up cards. Now these up cards, they represent ions in our game. And there's two, right? So ions, basically how you get them is that you'd either remove electrons from an atom or you add electrons from an atom. So basically you get these two right here, which are a cation and an anion. Alright. Next up, we have these big boys. Now these big boys, they're gigas, alright? These represent molecules in our game and are basically the highest tier that a card can achieve. Now, at the current state of the game, there are only two types of molecules, which are covalent compounds and ionic compounds. Firstly, we have the ionic compounds, and the way you'd get them is that you'd usually have a metal donate its electrons to a non-metal, which would create ions, in this case, a cation and an anion. Due to the high electronegativity differences and the opposing charges, they basically attract one another through electrostatic force. Think of sort of like magnets, per se. And this is quite different with covalent compounds, which, instead of transferring electrons from one another, they instead share them, like the good neighboring cousins that they are. Alright, so, this isn't really a good representation of it. I even did it wrong. But I will show you one of the example of covalent compounds that I have in my game, which is right here, somewhere. Post me, please, edit it. But yeah, that's pretty much it, alright? And next up, we have the ion armor, which are these red cards right here. I don't have them, just pop it up the screen. I don't know why I'm losing cards these days. So these are basically polyatomic ions, which, they're still ions, but, instead of having just one type of element, they have multiple. And these can comprise of a lot of things. So right here, I have hydroxide, but you also have sulfonate, carbonate, cyanide, you get it. Now, this sort of idea is kind of akin to Digi-Armor from Digimon, whereby they don't really have any combative capabilities, and they're just more towards an accessory or a means of evolution, one might say. And last, but certainly not least, we have the electron cards. Now, the electron cards, they basically act as the energy for our game. And it's very crucial. And this aligns well with chemistry, as most of the processes that are in chemistry, which includes ionization or molecular bonding, they involve electrons in some capacity. Which is the reason why I made electrons such a vital component in this game. It's basically everywhere, from initiating movesets to even controlling the very mechanics of the game. Speaking of mechanics,
before I start with anything, let's start with the glue of my game, electrons. In Electrobond, electrons are pivotal. They're used for playing attacks, status effects, and tying close with the mechanics of the game, specifically evolution. Evolution is basically our game's version of ionization, and there are two ways electrons are incorporated with this. First, if an evolution involves creating an anion, the number of electrons accepted by the atom are the number of electrons that you, the player, gain. Conversely, if it were a cation, then the number of electrons that are removed will be given to the opponent instead. Of course, to balance this, I purposely made it so that cations are generally stronger than anion units. In theory, this would help encourage players into using both types of ions instead of just hogging to one. I also had another mechanic in mind, but it was super unbalanced and I just couldn't get it to work. Basically, it's similar to Inscription's overflow damage, whereby if you kill a card on the first row and there's excess, that damage is dealt to the back row, from which whatever excess damage you had after that you could gain that many amount of electrons in your hand. I named it shell break, a play on word for the shells that are contained in an atom, which doesn't really apply well now since electrons are basically proven to be catchables. Now, aside from the half-baked name, the mechanic itself didn't fly and it just seemed too overpowered and one-sided. I don't know, maybe it has Mega Me, but right now, it ain't cutting. What is cutting though is the next mechanic, fusion, which is the equivalent of molecular bonding. In Electrobond, we decided to reflect this phenomenon by making ionic compounds being created using ions and covalent compounds with their base atom. At first, it seems like covalent compounds are easier to play, but you tell me that after you played all 4 of your boron atoms and not have a die in the first few rounds. Like most TCGs, you gotta have a way of differentiating which cards from where. I'm not sure if there's a name for it, so I'm just gonna call them identifiers. Identifiers come in many forms. They could be group factions, or individual typings, or just color. Whatever the case, they exist so that card synergies can be formed, and for my game, I have 2. Each representing either a card's physical or chemical properties, those being classes and attributes. Classes are more general and don't really have a play in attacks much, other than some abilities. I have 6 for now, but I plan to change that later. It just seems a bit too jumbled. I mean, I could go straight for a periodic table, but I think we're showing a bit too much favor on metals, no? Attributes, on the other hand, have a lot more saying towards attacks. Basically, they're like typings. Here's all 9 of them on screen, and this is the very poorly made type chart for it. Use whatever logic you want, Pokemon typing never made sense anyway. They give a 2x boost to whatever attribute they beat, and there's no weakness penalty. And that, as far as I can tell, are the only mechanics that the game has. Hey, what do you call a group of berry-stick vegetables? A Caesar salad. Hey, look, that's the next section.
Yeah, sharp like an edge of a samurai sword, the mental blade cut through flesh and bone. No more mind at peace, the word out of order, listen then the heat that gets colder. Oh, yes,
you know, considering the timeline of this video, I wouldn't really want to drag this section further. Plus, I feel it's more appropriate if I made this into its own separate video later. So, for now, I'm just gonna explain the juicy bits. Firstly, the models. If you plan on making an AR project, you gotta have yourselves 3D objects to be displayed. In this case, I just whipped out the good old blender, block out the design, drink a few liters of tea, do the texturing on a separate platform, add bones, weight painting, animation, bake a couple of animations, and boom. Oh, wait, we're done? Pretty much. That was a very simplified version of it, and rest assured, it was a lot of work. Honestly, I'm kinda new to these things, so it's nice to try something new once in a while and improve myself with a new skill. So now that the models are taken care of, how do we display it? Well, luckily for me, there's a development tool out there called Euphonium that's simple to use and gets the job done, all things considered. If you're wondering how I got word of this, you can check out Fyone's video on how he used AR on Pokemon cards, which actually became an early inspiration for me into bringing this game to life. So whatever was on this video, it was pretty much the same thing. I made the system UI, I coded the buttons, I even added this pop-up menu thingy which tells you the moveset of that card, heavily inspired by Persona 5.
Oh, great heavens!
And when all is said and done, this is the result. FYI, this is just a scripted demo that I made for a competition before this, so the coding has definitely seen better days, but I plan on polishing it up later down in the line. Alright, AR's done, the mechanics are done, now's the segment that everyone has been waiting for. How do I play Electrobond?
What? You thought I planned any of that?
Yep, surprise, there's no concise gameplay for the game yet. I know I explained earlier about the mechanics, but man, the playtesting that I've done beforehand were rough. Sometimes I had to change rules, other times the cards were revised, but more often than not, I was just kind of left there lost as a pigeon. Honestly, I felt like I was just not experienced enough in TCG when it actually came to creating the rule set itself, which is partly why I'm making this video. I know I lack knowledge in these parts, and I love to hear what other people have to say about the game, whether casual or professional. I'll probably make another video too, showcasing the gameplay that I've thought of for now, but that's for another day. Right now, I think it's best to just touch up on some cards and maybe make an online demo for this game. If you guys have stuck long enough to the end of this video, thanks man. And hey, if you like the video, I hope you can stick around for the other videos that I have in store. I don't know how the schedule is gonna look like, but I'll try my darndest to make it like once every 2 weeks. If you have any questions or suggestions regarding the game, you can leave a comment down below. I'll try and respond to as much as I can. I think my next video would probably be around how I make my cards in general, so stay tuned for that when it comes. And to anyone out there who plans on creating games or STEM-based games, I can't recommend enough Nordis. His designs surrounding scientific concepts are honestly cool, and one of the few that I've seen taking STEM stuff and turning them into mods. Really awesome guy, and I even copied his simplistic art style and made the class icons shown early. Sorry, Nordis. Alright, that's a wrap. Until our next encounter, fellow stranger.